Gideon Levy is a columnist at the Israeli newspaper Haaretz. You're joining us from Tel Aviv. Gideon, your reaction to the shutdown by the Israeli government of Al Jazeera in Israel.
What a shame. What a shame to be an Israeli and an Israeli journalist on such a day. What a shame to be an Israeli when my country is closing down such important networks like Al Jazeera English and Al Jazeera Arabic only because some politicians do not like what's being informed there. I can tell you as a viewer, as a news consumer, not as a commentator and not as a writer, that for me, the last 7 months, Al Jazeera English was one of the most, if not the most, source of information about what's going on in Gaza. Because Israeli TV doesn't show anything from Gaza, and Al Jazeera English was such a reliable and enriching source of information for me as a citizen, not as a writer. To close this down means to close down the option of free press in Israel, not less than this.
Gideon, what's behind this? If Benjamin Netanyahu had wanted to shut down Al Jazeera, he probably could have done so far earlier in this war, right? We're moving into almost the 8th month of the war. Why is this happening now, and what's behind the decision?
So there are two things, why now and why at all. At all, as usual in Israel, everything is focused at the domestic politics, and the base likes it. If you fail in the battlefield, at least you can win in another arena, namely to close down an Arab international network. They love it, the right-wingers in Israel. Here we show the Arabs in their language how strong we are and how courageous and devoted we are.
And by the way, to point out the obvious, correct me if I'm wrong, but that you say the base loves it. The base, Netanyahu's base does not watch Al Jazeera, I think is pretty safe to say. So they love the shutting down of a network that they don't watch.
Absolutely, absolutely. They don't watch and they don't want to watch, but they want to see it beaten. So if you can't beat Hamas, at least you beat Al Jazeera. So that's one sentiment. About the timing, I have my suspicion, but this is not based, that the timing has to do with the deal, because finally Al Jazeera is a Qatari network, and Qatar is one of those who is pulling and pushing for a settlement, for a deal, and Netanyahu is doing in the last 2 or 3 days anything possible to sabotage a deal, and this might be connected.
So I want to make sure I understand this hypothesis here that you're explaining. You're saying maybe Netanyahu is trying to pressure Qatar by shutting down Al Jazeera in the context of Qatar's mediation on the ceasefire deal.
Absolutely. And by the way, the Qatari mediation was a reason why he postponed this decision for so long, because the Americans, or the Qatari directly or through the Americans, put pressure on Netanyahu not to close it down. But now, when he feels that there is a chance for a deal, he goes for an option, let's destroy everything, including Al Jazeera.
Okay. You mentioned that this is good for Netanyahu's base, so I understand the political benefit to him. I would surmise that there is also a long-term political cost, not just for Netanyahu, but for Israel in general. When you shut down an international news network, even the White House was talking about freedom of the press and their concerns over this when the law was passed a month ago. When you shut this down, it becomes that much harder to say that you're a very healthy and robust democracy.
And when you kill 13,000 children, there is no thinking for the long term now. Ever since the 7th of October, Israel is not thinking in any long terms. Do they have any plan for the day after? Do they know what they want from Gaza? Do they know what is a total victory? I mean, we are in the last 7 months led by a government without any plan, without any consideration about the consequences of its policies, It's only from today to today to please the base and to survive in power.
One final question, because you were saying earlier, going back to what you said at the beginning of your first answer, I think it was, you said, in the Israeli media, you don't see the war. You don't get the information that you get when you watch Al Jazeera. So what does the war look like as seen and as presented by Israeli media to Israelis?
Very, very simple picture. We are the victims. We are the only victims, as usual. There was the 7th of October, and we will stick to the 7th of October, which was almost the Holocaust in the eyes of most of the Israelis. And this 7th of October enable us and legitimize us to do whatever we want in Gaza. Gaza doesn't interest us. Gaza is Hamas, and Hamas is Gaza, and therefore we should punish them all, and if possible, even kill them all, destroy them all. And we have no interest to see what's the suffer of Gaza, what's the punishment of Gaza, what the innocent people of Gaza are going through. We are only interested in the brave soldiers, the hostages, and the victims of the 7th of October. That's our world, and that's the world that the Israeli media as a whole is describing to its viewers for 7 months now, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. Only this. You don't see Gaza. I just want to add one sentence, with your permission. My newspaper, Haaretz, will publish tomorrow its leader against the decision to close down Al Jazeera. It's a very sharp and very clear message that we are against it.
Okay. I'll be reading you. I'll be reading that, and I do read you as a columnist in Haaretz. Gideon, pleasure talking to you today, as ever.
Thank you very much for having me.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.